Hello everybody. Hey, how's it going? I am having the world's busiest week. So, hopefully everything is how it should be and you can hear me. And I had to set this up super speedily. But I don't think I missed anything, so it's all good. Thank you for tuning in once again. If you are here, sat on the live stream, let me know you're here in the chat. Firstly, I wanted this live stream to just be kind of a bit of a thank you. So thank you to everyone who subscribed to the channel so far, because I hit 5,000 subscribers last night, just before midnight. And that was my kind of next big milestone for the channel. So really appreciate everyone who has subscribed and who watches these videos regularly and comments all the time and just engages with me and with the channel, because it just makes my life so much easier. So much better than just me sat trying to make up ideas and talk to myself. So it's great to have you guys in the chat. Hey Catman, hey Elias, thank you for tuning in. I really wasn't sure if this had gone right, because when I was looking earlier to see the little placeholder that they put up when you commit to a live stream, I couldn't find it anywhere at all. So I'm really glad that you guys are here. So in this video, I wanted to just kind of do a little bit of a fun tier list of classic vintage basses that I've played, vintage basses that I love. They're kind of classics and vintages, so they're all kind of those basses that we saw are heroes if you're into that kind of scene. Any of the bass players of the past play, from the 60s right up to probably about the end of the 80s or something. Probably a bit earlier than that, probably 60s and 70s really. But yeah, these are some of my classic favourite basses, and I'm just going to do a little bit of ranking of them. Is it serious? No, don't take it too seriously. Just the ones that I played, the ones that I've loved, and some of my favourites, and hopefully you'll maybe see a bass that you want to go and try out and play. A lot of these have reissues made of them, so it's worth trying them out if you get one and see one. And while I'm here, if you have any questions to ask, whatever, pop it in the comments and in the chat, and I will get to it. And if you're watching this on the replay, let me know your thoughts on some of these basses, and as well as if you're watching live, your experience with these basses, and maybe we can do it together. Let's try and rank them all together. So here we go. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Hopefully I'll get this right. As I say, busy week. Everything is all... There we go. Perfect. There's me. There's the screen. What more could we want? So classic, if you've seen this type of video before from me, D to S. Really, I think these are all really cool basses. So there's not really a proper D that's terrible or anything. They're all classics for a reason. But yeah, no harm in kind of giving my judgment on each of them. So we'll start in the D. And as mentioned in the chat with the Longhorn, I'm going to start with the Longhorn. These basses are not really all-purpose basses, I don't think. I really enjoy the sound of them for what they are. But if you were to turn up to a gig or a session with one of these, you'd have to know exactly what you were going to use it for. I don't think in most instances people would just take it and go, oh yeah, that's a great bass tone. Very hollowed out, very scooped. The bass itself is kind of not really built like a traditional bass. It's hollowed out inside, and it's built from, is it Mosrite? Is that the material? But yeah, it's not built like a proper, I say proper, but you know, basses that we're used to. And it's super lightweight. You can kind of throw it about a bit. Not an expensive bass. But they're cool. They've got their own little place. They're great for tic-tac bass and that kind of stuff. But if you were to use it generally, I think people would probably say not sure about that, and quickly get you to switch to your P bass. So next we've got the Fender Bass 6. Now, interestingly, I kind of really want to own one of these basses for the fact that it's just something a bit different. But yeah, in general use, it's not the same as a bass really. The tone it gets is never quite as thick and punchy as you want. I like a lot of basses with 3 pickups, but it's a little bit thinner than most basses with 3 pickups. Those of you who don't know about the Bass 6, it's a guitar tuning but on a bass. So it's a 30-inch scale, so a short scale, same as a Mustang bass, but you've got E, A, D, G, and then you've got a B and another E, so you can play guitar chord shapes on it. A Fender specifically say it's not a baritone guitar, which is not. Those bottom strings are exactly the same as a bass guitar, but it doesn't quite have the same sound as a bass guitar, but it can do that duty. But I think for most people, probably not a classic that you would want to play much of. I know that they've used them in the Cure quite a lot, but that's kind of very few moments that it's been used in bass playing history, and I wouldn't really consider it a bass like others. But interesting nonetheless, and so it goes in the D for that reason. Into the C category. Now this is going to be all my opinions, so it's going to get a little bit controversial probably. But if you guys have differing opinions, let me know in the comments, and maybe we can sway the tier list and build it together. But I'm going to put into the C category the Music Man Sabre. I don't really like it, if I'm honest. I do think they are more usable and versatile than the two basses below it in the D category. But I don't think that it does anything much better than a Stingray. I generally prefer a Stingray. It does have more pickups and slightly different options, but I don't think it does anything better. And I think there's probably a reason why they're not really made anymore. And even the reissues lasted a very short period of time. I think the Stingray is just a better bass and a better overall feeling bass. And the quality of the neck and the feel of the neck on a Stingray is a bit better for me. You guys who've watched the channel know that I like a bigger neck, so Sabre's a little bit too slim and skinny for me. So there we go, that's the Sabre into C. Next I am gonna go for, controversial. I think I'm gonna put the Gibson EB3 into this category as well. They have definitely secured their place in rock history and have been used by many players throughout the years. But for me, they just don't feel great. Again, skinny necks that don't feel very robust. And the sound you can get from them, they're almost two polar opposites. They're too different to really work well. You've got the big Mudbucker pickup at the front, which is really dark and lacks any mid-range really, and then you have the pickup at the back which has got a load of cut, but the two of them don't really balance each other out in a satisfying way, so you can either be not really heard or you can have too much thin tone with the back pickup. So for that reason it goes into C, but undeniably has its place and I just haven't enjoyed it. Ilias, no, it's a 30-inch scale, I think. I'm pretty sure it's 30-inch scale from the ones that I've played. Next is going to be, I think Catman might be right. I think the Thunderbird might have to go as a C. I love the look of a Thunderbird. I think the old ones are really cool as well. I love the metal pickup and they look great. But practically they are not a great bass. I had one for a very short period of time. I think I mentioned this on the last live stream I did, how my Thunderbird was kind of the bass that I had for maybe a month at the most, and I managed to leave a ding on it as well, which is helpful for the resale value. But yeah, super skinny neck. The one I had was the later one with the Gibson, just the black pickups, when Gibson was kind of desperately not doing well. And as much as I wanted it to be cool and enjoy it, correct, yes, Catman, they fit in no gig bags, which is irritating in itself. And they are just uncomfortable to play for a long period of time, really. They don't really sit nicely in the way that you want them to. I bought it so I could kind of wear it low slung and just play rock stuff, because I wasn't really enjoying the band I was in at the time. And I thought that might make it better, but it didn't really. I recorded it once and it sounded alright. But yeah, it's just undoubtedly one of the coolest looking basses, but not one of the most practical basses in the world. So that goes into C for me. Next I'm gonna put I think I might have to put the Hofner in there, which will upset some people if you're a Beatles fan. They have their own sound, definitely, and that's the thing about a Hofner. It has its own sound, its own place. but I don't think it's practical for most usage. They're not particularly well built. They're not massively robust. The new ones can get really expensive, and they are really nice feeling basses. But to spend that amount of money on a bass that has a very distinct single sound, I kind of struggle with, because as soon as you pick it out and start playing it, it does sound. It gives you that McCartney classic Beatles type sound, and the old ones aren't really built that well. The reason Paul McCartney played them was because they weren't expensive, they weren't well built, so they could just change them in and out on tour, much like the Fender idea of changing the neck on tour if something goes wrong. So that's why the Hofner goes into C for me. So I think going up to B now, I'm going to put the Gibson Grabber. I was a big Kiss fan growing up, so seeing Gene Simmons play these on live and other albums, yeah, it's just, I think that was just that album, wasn't it? It was just on Alive, really. But cool basses. I owned a G3, and that's going to come later. But the G1 got the slidey pickup, something a bit different, something cool. Kind of not as good as the P bass, I don't think, but it's a little bit more versatile. Whether it really needs to be that more versatile by moving the pickup, I don't know. But they're quite comfortable to play, to be honest. They're 34.5-inch scale, but they're still pretty comfortable. And despite the body being quite wide, it does sit very nicely on the knee, and plays well on the strap. So practical, combination of different sounds. It goes into B for me. Just tuning in the comments. Sorry, I put my camera right behind where the comments are. No, I agree. I've had Music Man basses, and I've not really been sad to lose them. The ones that I do like are the 2-band EQ ones, which we'll get to in a bit. But most of them, I've had Music Man bongos. I've had three Music Man bongos. I've had a Stingray. I think just 3 bongos and a Stingray. And I did have a Sterling for a while one of the bongos was broken. And yeah, no, I don't think I'll miss them either. They're cool, they've got their own thing, but I think it's quite distinctly their own thing. And I think you have to kind of learn how to play them in a way. That sounds like a weird thing to say, but I think you kind of have to style your sound around the way those pickups sound. Less more so than with a Fender bass, which I think you can just pick up and play, and it has its own character. So next we're going to go, we're in B. I think the Mustang goes into B. Cool basses, undoubtedly. Short scale, really comfortable. Something different. I do enjoy the Mustang because it's something different. But I would say that I prefer the modern ones with the jazz pickup as well. I think that gives it a bit more variety, makes it a bit more exciting. There's a bit more you can do with it than having one of the Mustangs with just a P-bass pickup, or the Mustang version of a P-bass pickup. I think a P-bass always does a bit of a better job of that. And I think when you change the scale from 34 shorter, sometimes it's better off to have a little bit of that back pickup in there. The option to have it. Same with 5-string basses and having that back pickup there to just add a bit of definition to a string that's not quite so tense from the scale length. Next, I am gonna put the 50s precision bass, so the P bass before the P bass that we know. Just going in B with its single coil pickup. I do think they're really cool basses, and they totally have their place as a little bit of a different sound, but not significantly different. Playability wise, the body is a block slab body, so it's a little bit more difficult to play. It's not as easy to get comfortable with them, and the necks are really big on these, so obviously I'm going to like that if you know me. But yeah, I think they are different, and it's cool to have been the first prototype that kind of led, not prototype, but the first bass that led to the P bass we know and love. But it's kind of a thicker jazz bass sound rather than a proper P bass sound, and yeah, that's kind of why that goes into B for me. It's cool and a good piece of history, but not quite the the bass that came later. Next, I'm going to... Oh, this is difficult. I feel like I've stuffed B and I should have put more into A and S. Maybe not. Let's see. Let me know if you guys have any questions, by the way. Put them in the comments. There we go. Should I rather buy a player? Here we go. Let me get it up rather than do this. Should I buy a player precision or a precision performer? What's my opinion? My opinion is that I much prefer the player. I don't like the performer because the performer has the grease bucket tone pot. And the thing I love about a P bass is when you roll off the tone and the bass level increases. So you get a bit of the attenuation of the highs and the bottom end is boosted. Whereas with the player precision, the performer, they need to stop naming all these basses with P's. With the performer, the tone pot, when you roll it off, nothing happens to the bass, it just cuts off the treble, and I find that you just get kind of a dark, thin sound, and I like that thickness that you get from a P bass when you roll off the tone. I typically run a P bass, not really full open, unless it's for a rocky thing, in which case I'll add distortion and tweak the amp. I would rather have the tone roll off and run it at about 75%, 50%, and all the way off, potentially. So yeah, that's my opinion. I'd go for a player just because it just covers the whole spectrum of P-bass tones, whereas a performer doesn't quite do that. And the pickups are overly bright, in my opinion, and don't really sound like a P-bass, or how I'd want a P-bass to sound. I also agree with this very strongly because Japanese Yamaha stuff is really good. Next, I'm going to put up, having discussed that, I think I'm going to put I love these, but I'm going to put it here, EB2. Really love the EB2. One of the basses I really want to own, and I play lots of them when I see them around, but I'd want to have an EB2D with the pickup in the back, so you get the bridge pickup option. Tonally, not particularly versatile again, but they look really cool for a start, which helps for me. You can also get a wide variety of these because I played ones in 59 one. I played in Nashville with banjo tuners, so the tuners are behind, and some of them feel really delicate, but they are cool basses. They have the baritone switch on it, which kind of cuts all the bass out and boosts you get more treble end and not so much bass. And then turn that back off and you get kind of this thick, muddy bass tone. But I think with that and the D pickup, when you have an EB2D with the bridge pickup, that is a bit more versatile than just the straight up EB2 or an Epiphone Rivoli. But yeah, I think they're really cool, and I do want to own one of them at some point. I just need to find the right one. But yes, that's going to go at A for me. As I say, these are all my opinions. Let me know your thoughts. And tell me when I'm wrong, which is probably most of the time, but you guys seem to stick by me, so that's really cool, so thank you. And for those of you who just tuned in, thank you for getting me to 5,000 subscribers. I really appreciate it, and all your interaction and everything you do. So thank you guys, because without you it doesn't really work. Next I'm going to go for... It's not a classic, so Yamaha BB2000 has got to go into this slot. BB 2000s are great feeling basses. If you can get one used at a good price, you're going to be really, really happy with them. Hard to go wrong, in my opinion. I had a BB 5000, which was pretty much a 2000 but with 5 strings, and it would have been better, I think, just to have been a 4-string BB 2000. But the jazz bass tones on these are really punchy, so that back pickup's really punchy. And the P pickup being reversed is a little bit more balanced. I do like the thickness you get on the G and D strings by having that P pickup reversed. And I think, while it doesn't sound like a classic P bass, because we're kind of used to the sound of the E and the A and then the D and the G being the other way around on a normal P bass, it does a really good job of it, and it's kind of P bass plus. It's a little bit better than just the standard Fender in terms of construction and everything. Really robust basses, and the only thing for me is that they are neck through, and I don't really love the neck through tone. But if you find one, definitely give one a play. They're really cool. Next, I'm gonna put the Rickenbacker, I think. Versatile bases, definitely, but not as versatile as a Fender. They've got all the options you could possibly want. I really like you can pull the tone pots up and down, but I just don't think that you can fit it into as many situations as a Fender. And when I was reviewing the Rickenbacker 4003, this is a 4001, but when I was reviewing the 4003, I found that I could do pretty much anything on it, but there was always a better option. So unless you're doing kind of the indie rock thing and the rock thing, I would probably turn to a Fender rather than the Rickenbacker. But it's undoubtedly got its place in history. It's a growly little monster, and it is versatile, and the sounds are a little bit different to a Fender. I just think that we've heard Fenders so many times on records that it's difficult not to just go for a Fender. It just sounds better for most situations. I think maybe that might be it, but for the B, the A even. But I'm just going to dive into the comments and see what you guys are saying. Latham, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Sorry if I pronounce anyone's name wrong ever. It's really embarrassing. I'm really torn between buying a P bass or a Mustang bass. What is your opinion or suggestions? That really depends on what kind of tone you want or how many other basses you've got that do a similar thing. I think the Mustang bass makes you play in a different way, and I think that's the thing about all basses really, that I love about a different bass is how it makes me play rather than just being different for one reason or another. If you want a short scale bass and you want something comfortable to sit and play at home, but it's also comfortable to take out on a gig or pops in the boot of your car easily, the Mustang makes a lot of sense. I think if you need or don't have a P bass yet, you should probably just get a P bass first, because it's just an absolute classic tone. And the thing I remember was that when I didn't have a P bass, I started out on jazz basses, and I played a Squier P bass at school, and remember thinking, oh wow, this is great. This is a really great sound. Why haven't I done this before? And after that, it kind of set me down the path of realizing that I heard much more P bass tones than I did jazz bass tones in my head. And if you haven't got a P bass yet, I'd go for a P bass. If you want the shorter scale, if you want something a bit more compact, then look at the Mustang bass. In a way, they do similar things, but I think you can't really go wrong with a P. So my default would be a P unless you already have one. Other questions? This is a hot topic, I think, in my opinion. JP Tet says, how about a 5-string P bass? Never came across one, but seems to be really awesome to have for playing deep R&B stuff or with down-tuned bands. Is the B good enough? My BB 735 is a little lackluster. The first bit I'm actually surprised by is your BB 735 being lackluster. Let me know about that more in the comments, because I really liked my 735 when I played it. And the low B on that was really good. But there is a lot to do with the bridge and how you can set it up and tweak it and what strings you have and your action. So let me know what your setup is at the minute with that. 5-string P basses I don't think work. As I kind of alluded to just there about the pickup at the back, I don't think the P bass pickup on its own really works with a low B because it's so far forward on the treble and how the B string speaks. You don't get a very defined B, and so it doesn't really cut through. So I find even with my Sadowski that's behind me, when I go to just the P pickup and then play the B string, it's just not got enough definition and punch, and it just has to have a little bit of that bridge pickup in it. The thing with the 5th string on any bass is that what you're hearing more is actually the 2nd and 3rd harmonics than the fundamental, and having the pickup closer to the bridge allows you to get a bit more of that harmonic content and hear it more clearly and more in a more defined way. And the other thing to mention is that the way a P bass pickup typically gets set up, it's going to be sloping away even further from the B. So I just think it's very difficult to get a 5-string P on its own to really speak. What can work is to have a P that you nudge in a bit of the back pickup, then you start to get a bit more definition on it. But yeah, I personally don't think 5-string P basses are that great, and I would get one, but make sure there was a bridge pickup behind it. Next, just going through a few more questions, and then I'll get back to the list. Darren, Rick's would be in a Cat E on their own for me. That bridge, truss rod, and weedy pickups. Other than that, totally agree with my placing so far. Thank you for agreeing. That's really good. I'm glad that I'm doing something good for the bass community and not just talking a load of rubbish that no one agrees with. I think, yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, the thing that I remember with that Rick that I was using for a while was I went to take the back pickup cover off, and then realised that actually you can't get it off and it's all trapped underneath, and you have to take all the strings off and half the bass apart in order to get it off. I don't think they're the most practical basses in the world, and I would argue that maybe their price doesn't justify the kind of tones you get from them. Yeah, not so sure about... they're a classic though. I don't think I could put them any lower than in that range, because they are versatile in terms of the rock scene and what you can do with them, and if you want to dig in, you can get a lot of sounds out of them. Guy guitar covers. I love both my Rick and my Gibson Ripper for recordings. I prefer the Rick, but to play with band I prefer the Ripper, definitely. I think those Gibsons are just so playable and comfortable and just practical for band things. I've often said that I think if you just had a whole lineup of Gibson basses, you could kind of cover all the Fender ground in its own little different way, but it's something that I would consider and love to do if I could find Gibsons that were well built enough and lasted long enough. I just feel like some of them just aren't, sadly. Next question from Catman. I don't know if I've ever played one, but what are your thoughts on the Gibson RD bass? I've not played one either, so I can't really give that many thoughts on them. Did all RD basses have the Moog electronics in them, or was that not true? Because I think there's something quite cool to be said for all the Moog stuff in that. But yeah, I haven't played one. I figure it would be quite similar to a Thunderbird, maybe a little bit better. But I know that a lot of people that played them at the time and that I've spoken to said they were rubbish. So who knows? I will have to get my hands on one at some point. Here you go, JP. Back to your Yamaha question again, sorry. My 735 sounds money in the B, and in general, the P pickup sounds too modern. I would agree that the P pickup is very modern on the 735. It's not really, doesn't really roll up like a traditional P. A lot like I was saying about the Performer earlier, it's kind of similar thing to that, I feel. And the active electronics don't help. Muddy B in general. I mean, my questions would be about pickup height and pickup the distance from the strings. Make sure you got that set right, because it shouldn't really be muddy in my experience. Like you say, it's quite a modern sounding P pickup, and I didn't experience it being muddy. I actually experienced it having a lot of definition and cut. Also different strings. Do you have a dead string on the B? I know that's a bit of a long shot, potentially, but I've had that with a lot of sets of strings where you just get one that's a bit iffy. So I don't know if it's that, but just a couple of things worth looking at potentially. But yeah, it doesn't sound right based on my experience. Great basses. This is slightly becoming a Yamaha appreciation fest. So I'm going to get back to classic bass in a second. Elias, what about TVP40? Isn't that a classic? I do think that is a classic bass. I haven't played them much. When I have, they've been really heavy. Pardon me. They are really heavy, but they are cool basses and pretty versatile. But yeah, like I said, not played them very much at all. But definitely a classic look and cool bass. I'd probably say that would probably end up in the B category if it was to go in there, I reckon. Somewhere around there. Sorry, looking around my camera to see the last comments. It's not doing it. It's not doing what I wanted to do. Oh, I've done it about 4 times now. There we go. Eric, PV is probably more of a classic in the US than Europe. Probably agree. There aren't many around on these shores. So here we go, top category, and you can see the basses I've got there already. But first I'm going to put in the Stingray. So this is, well, it's Leo Fender's, which design was this? Number 4 after the 50s P as well. But yeah, it's a classic, isn't it? After the P and the J, the Stingray was the next bass that kind of got allowed into studios as such, and people started using regularly on records, and it's a classic sound. I do much prefer the 2-band EQ ones to the modern 3-band things that we get now. I really don't like the 3-band Stingrays at all, but I love the 2-bandy ones and the classics. I also love that these had the built-in mute. I think that's super cool, and the Rickenbacker's got that as well. But yeah, the built-in mute is really cool, and I don't think you can go wrong with a 1 pickup Stingray. I think that's the way to do a Stingray, is just to keep it simple, have that 1 pickup and that sound, and use the EQ, because it really can do quite a lot. So Stingray got to make it up there to the top. Next one, I just love these basses. Gibson G3. Now I owned one of these and I wish I'd been able to keep it, but the neck was not in a good condition and was starting to twist. And the amount I wanted to use it, it just wasn't very practical. Which is kind of what I was saying about earlier. The Gibsons I've come across just aren't as robust as I want them to be. And so it's difficult to really find ones that are in really good condition that you can regularly use. But yeah, G3, what a sounding bass. It sounds so good. Just those passive pickups. I think they're Bill Lawrence pickups, 3 passive pickups. And when you ran all 3 together, it was just the punchiest, bassiest thing, but with enough attack and cut and everything you could possibly want from your bass sound. Loved them. Really, really cool bass. And as I say, because of the twisting neck, I had to get rid of it. But if it hadn't been for that, I would have kept it. And probably use it all the time. Just a really great range of sounds, simple to use, but that 3 pickup combination just doesn't get done very often, but it really works. And the pickups in it sounded great. So Gibson G3 goes right in my top list of classic basses, which probably won't be for most of you, and you'll probably think, what am I doing? But yeah, I really love mine, so that's why that's going up there. Next, obviously, Fender Jazz Bass got to go in there. Can you get more versatile? I mean, yes, you can get more versatile, but what I'm talking about is the simplicity of it being versatile. You can't go wrong with a Jazz. There's so little to get wrong, and you can go from warm, thumpier sounds at the front with the front pickup to much cuttier, biting sounds. Cuttier, that's not a word. Biting sounds on the bridge pickup, and it's all you can really need. If you could only have one bass for anything, it'd probably be a Jazz. I mean, for me it'd be a PJ, but I wouldn't be upset if I was just left with a Jazz bass and nothing else, because I could do everything I could possibly need to. So Jazz bass goes there, and also really comfortable, despite the fact that the body shape you'd think is a little bit odd. Always very comfortable. So that's Jazz for me. Just have a quick drink. And then finally, P-Bass. What can I say? Again, just like the Jazz, simple but versatile. You can make it fit in pretty much any genre. Maybe there's another bass that'll be a better choice, but it won't ever really be a bad choice. So yeah, that goes into the top category for me as well. Just love them. Can't go wrong with a P. And yeah, just these 2 basses on their own would be enough for pretty much anyone, I think. So there we go. That's my little list of things. In the D we had the Dan Electro Longhorn and the Fender Bass 6. Then the Music Man Sabre in C, with the Gibson EB3 and the Gibson Thunderbird and Hofner 500-1. That goes in C. Then in B we had the Gibson G1, the Mustang, and the 50s original P-Bass, the not the original as in Fender original that we know now, but as in the original precision bass. Then in A, the Gibson EB2, Yamaha BB 2000, and the Rickenbacker 4001, and then top class basses, top classics, the Stingray, the Gibson G3, that was my wildcard choice, the Jazz Bass, and then the P. So there we go. That's that bit done. I'm going to just go and answer some of your questions and then disappear in a few minutes' time because I've had a long week, but you guys got questions, so let's get them answered. Also, anybody who's tuned in late, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for joining this kind of live stream and part celebration of hitting 5,000 subscribers. So thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it, and hopefully let's get more stuff going, more subscribers, grow this community, and have more people on each of these live streams. Here we go. Right, I'm just scrolling through the comments. You guys really picked out some really good bases, by the way, that I've totally missed, and I really appreciate that. Some of these should have been on there. GNL 1000. The GNL stuff is really good, isn't it? Really versatile. I would probably have put the GNL 1000 into the B category because the 2000 just has so much more choice with the 2 pickups. But and I also don't think that kind of one humbucker in the front always works as well for me. It's a bit, it's not quite as defined in the mid-range as the P-Bass pickup would be. So that would go into that kind of category for me. Groovy Spaghetti, what do you think about the HH Stingrays? I had one and I didn't really like it that much. As I kind of mentioned a few minutes ago, I think I'd rather have just had the single pickup. It's nice to have the second pickup there, but I'd rather have a single pickup and 2-band EQ than the double H, because yeah, I just prefer the 2-band in general. Uli, Ken Smith, very classic and the best B string on the market. This is true. Still with only the neck pickup, which is close to the P position, similar grab but way better playability. Yeah, I'd agree. I've left Ken Smith off this I have left Ken Smith off this list. It's not going to happen. Can't say it. But yeah, I've left it off, and I probably a bit of an oversight. I think I was thinking kind of more the classic kind of rock side of things, and I didn't really go into that kind of 80s world because once you're in there, I mean, Federa, Ken Smith, Tobias Spaces, they're all going to kind of start pushing into that top range here in a different way as well. And they are really another quality of bass over the basses listed here, but with a different kind of style and thing in mind. But yeah, Ken Smith, undoubtedly a foundational tone of what we know and the choices we have today. Ilias with Amen, that was to the P-Bass. Appreciate that. Yes, Darren, definitely the P-Bass. Groovy Spaghetti again, 2P pickups. I mean, I've missed a bit here. That question was this, wasn't it? I'm curious what a P-Bass with 2 pickups would be like. Something I've looked at a lot actually is something I've considered. There are basses out there that have this combination. There's a builder in Nashville or near Nashville called Alien Audio. I don't know if they're still in business, but they do a double P pickup, and there's Lee Sklar had, I think as Aku mentions down here, Lee Sklar he has his own bass with 2 P pickups, but they're not in the P position. So the front P is in the front jazz bass position, and the back P is in the jazz bass bridge position. And where the original P bass pickup would have sat, he's got the battery compartment. But he also has a Yamaha made him a version of that bass. Gibson made him a version of that bass. So you can hear it over on his channel. There's a whole load of stuff of him playing. He was doing it during the first lockdown. So maybe check out Lee Sklar's videos. One of my biggest heroes, probably the biggest hero, and the bass player that defined my playing the most is Lee Sklar. And I've probably stolen everything I could possibly steal from him. Eric with a question: what is your favourite P bass? My own. Probably. I think it was someone mentioned it on the custom shop P bass video that I did, that they said that that bass kind of sounded different, like it sounded right for me or something, and I think it kind of does. I think it's kind of got its own thing, and we've kind of bonded. And I don't think it sounds quite like another P bass. It does sound like a P bass, but there's something about it that sounds a little bit different to most. So I do love that P bass. If I could, I'd have one with an even bigger neck. And there was one in London that I absolutely loved, which had a U-shaped neck. But when I went back to get it, it was gone. So sadly, that one is kind of lost to the past. But yeah, if I could find a P-Bass with a U-shaped neck, it might run it close. But I've got a soft spot for mine now, and I do think it's got its own sound in a way. Or we have between the two of us, my fingers and the bass. I'm quite trying to speed through these, although we'll be here for a very long time because I like answering questions. Not a classic. Oh, sorry. FT, not classic, but what a Schecter bass is like. Some of them look quite nice. I don't really know. I know Schecter guitars. One of the guitar players that I play with regularly uses Schecter guitars. They're very well built, really nice quality pieces. I think they're pretty much like most custom shop. I kind of equate them to similar to a Fender custom shop type thing, a Sur type build, if you know that from the guitar side, the guitar world. Really good, well built stuff. But I mean, from the bass perspective, I don't think there's a lot of great stuff outside of the custom shop. Would be my thought on that. I've never been that impressed by the odd couple of Schecters I've seen and played. Mr. MUK, which GNLP bass would you recommend as a potential alternative for a Fender? Is it the LB100? Or am I completely wrong? I think it might be the LB100 or is it the SB100? Darren seems to be... sorry, I'm trying to read multiple comments and think about different answers. To be honest, I'm not sure. I don't think I'm up enough on my GNL to know which one to suggest. So I might have to give that one a miss for now. I will find out and I'll have to answer another time once I know. But I think the LB is the one that's closest to a P-Bass, but let me know. Do you know SB1 is an interesting one? Those MFD pickups are hot but quite nice. You can use them in the right way. Awesome build. Yeah, I've not played one, so I can't really give my opinion on those too strongly. But I do know that they're cool pickups. I know you get a lot out of those. JP Tech back again. Thanks for your input. I was going to order a 5-string P American Pro, but I'm going to wait. Yeah, I don't think a different P bass is the answer to your problem at the minute. I would definitely stick in there and see what you can do about your 735 because it's a great bass in my experience. Spectre, I was about to say Schecter there. Spectre NS2, I think it's a classic, also at least on some scale. Probably, and also I think the fact that Warwick obviously took that design and then did their own thing with it, and well, pretty much copied it, didn't they? Undoubtedly, it has a place as a classic later on in our history of bass guitar and music. And I think, again, that would have been kind of in the next kind of category, the kind of that era of more the jazz fusion thing with the Ken Smith, the Federas, Spectres. Maybe it's unfair to label it as jazz fusion-y, but Tobias basses. But those kind of more boutique builders and that kind of era, the basses I've got here are kind of more, maybe the exception of the BB, they're 60s through the 70s. Mark, hey, I'm late to the party. You missed your part about Music Man Saber bass. I didn't know about its existence. It looks gorgeous. What's the difference between a Stingray and a Saber? Differences are the choice of two pickups. So you've got two pickups, and the neck is a little bit thinner on a Saber. Am I right in saying that the wiring is different as well in the way that it's wired, and different coils on a Saber? It's been so long since I played one. I can just remember the things that I kind of didn't like about it as much as the things I did. But yeah, I think the pickups are slightly different as well, wired slightly differently in terms of their tone. But for me, I just prefer the Stingray. Sabres are cool and they do look cool. But also there's the Cutlass to look at. That's got the graphite neck, which is something a bit different as well. Hey Land, greetings, my friend. I get asked this all the time and I haven't played a Sire yet. I just need to get them to send me some basses so I can try them out and play them for you guys, because always get asked about Sire. So if you guys want me to review stuff, one of the best things you can do is send those companies an email or a message on social media and tell them about the channel. I am going to be trying to push manufacturers to get me more stuff and to have a more availability to a wider range of gear, so I can keep doing my reviews and showing you guys stuff, and hopefully having hit 5,000 subscribers, that'll be more doable and practical now. Next, Meta Shape, replying to Groovy Spaghetti, 2P bass pickups and they are reverse, I always thought though it should be kind of one reverse and one not reverse, would make more sense. So to have the D and G have the furthest forward and the furthest back, but maybe that doesn't make sense. Maybe it's better to have more definition on the E string with the second P bass closer to the bridge. This makes no sense. I'm literally just thinking out loud now, so I'm going to stop doing that. Thank you, my man. Really appreciate that, and thank you for always commenting and being around the channel. Mr. MBK, my opinion on PJ basses, should everyone own one? I don't think everyone should own one, but I definitely know that I love them. If you've been around for a while, you'll know that I just talk about PJ all the time, being the thing for me. I like them with blends though, so if you've got a blend option, I much prefer that to just the bass, than just the switch. And here's the P on its own. So many questions and things about P's and J's. Any current basses that are future classics from Bob T? Interesting one. I think we kind of see a resurgence of the same things a lot of the time, don't we? I think that the Mustang, if the Mustang hadn't already happened, that would kind of be a future classic. Because I know that a lot of people have kind of gravitated towards them and used them a lot in the last few years. I'd say some of those boutique builders. I think that's probably going to be the thing. I think Sadowskis are going to become definitely a classic boutique thing. And the ones that were built by Roger when Roger eventually stops building basses, which is saying he's not going to do anytime soon. But once those are stopped being built, I think they'll become real classics and more in the vintage realm. I think a lot of those boutiques are going to become the vintages. Like those first hand-built Fenders. I think builders like Sadowski and Tobias are going to become those kind of classic basses. Outside of that, I'm trying to think of things that we've used a lot in recent years or have become synonymous with certain genres, and I can't really think of that many. I think as bass players, I think it's cool because we have always seemed to gravitate to new things and tried new things, but at the same time we always kind of are still going for those kind of classic tones, and that's exactly what I was thinking. Bass Life Connoisseur, I was thinking about Dingwall, and would Dingwall be a future classic? I don't think Dingwall itself will be a future classic, because I do feel like, I don't know, for me the Dingwall basses, I feel like they're going to sit in the same category as, is it Travis Bean? Are they the basses? Or Kramer did basses with aluminium necks. I feel like it's that kind of vibe where a different feature is kind of becomes trendy for a while, but eventually everyone kind of goes back. I've done my Dingwall spate, and kind of went back to traditional fretted basses because of the intonation. There's more character to a bass with standard intonation than a fan fret super long scale bass, and that's what drew me back to Fenders, back to Sadowski, back to all those kind of basses. Just typical horizontal traditional frets. So I don't think they will make it as a future classic. I think they will kind of fall into that kind of niche category of some people like them. But I probably will be proven wrong, and it'll become the bass that I should have kept, and I should never have sold my Dingwalls when I had them in the kind of hundreds serial numbers or early thousands. But there we go, we live and learn. And one more question from one more comment from Bass Life Connoisseur. Double pickups sound great together, but the right pickup placement is extremely important. Yeah, totally. That's the thing for me. That pickup placement is the most important with any bass. when it comes to pickups, that's what's going to define the tone really, alongside your fingers. Then we start looking at all the woods and stuff like that. But yeah, where the pickup sits is really important. So yeah, absolutely, totally agree. So that's it for this live stream. Thank you for all the questions, and hopefully you enjoyed the classic bass element of this video too. If you tuned in late, go and watch that on the replay and see where each of those basses ranked. Having done these comments, I've definitely left a few out by accident, but I think what's there is a range of great classic basses, and if you haven't played them, you definitely should play them at some point or other. Thank you once again for watching. Thank you for making this channel successful and getting it to 5,000 subscribers. I really appreciate it, and it's because of you guys and your comments and hitting the subscribe button that was possible. And yeah, if you're here and you haven't already, please hit the like button before you leave, and that just helps this video get out and into the algorithm, and let's get more people, more subscribers, and more people along. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys very soon, next week, probably Thursday, probably 8 PM. See you then. Bye bye.